All right, let's kick off our deep dive today. We're going to jump back in time to 1998, the wild west of the early internet.
Still dial-up for a lot of folks back then.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But amidst all that, Amazon was just starting to make some serious noise. We've got Jeff Bezos' letter to shareholders from that year, and I gotta say, it's a fascinating read.
Oh, it really is. It's like a blueprint for how he built this empire.
It's more than just numbers and financials, right? It gives you a real glimpse into his mindset, his vision for what e-commerce could become.
Absolutely. It's like a time capsule,
Yeah.
You can almost hear the whirring of those early internet modems as you read it.
Okay, so paint us a picture. What was Amazon like back then? They were already growing pretty fast, right?
Oh yeah, they went from like 148 million in revenue in 97 to a whopping 610 million in 98.
Whoa, that's huge growth. More than quadrupled their business in just 1 year.
It's mind-blowing, and you can see the seeds of that growth in this letter. Bezos talks about the success of things like one-click ordering, how it made buying stuff online so much smoother.
Yeah, I remember when that came out. It was a game changer for sure.
He also mentions expanding beyond books into things like music and videos.
Right, so it wasn't just about riding the dot-com wave. He had a strategy, a vision for where he wanted to take Amazon.
Totally. And a big part of that strategy was his obsession with the customer experience.
Oh yeah, he's known for that.
He talks about things like personalized recommendations and making sure they had a wide variety of product to offer, always putting the customer first.
One thing that struck me was his emphasis on this day one mentality. It sounds like it's more than just a catchy slogan for him.
It definitely is. He used it in his 97 letter, too. And it's this idea that you should approach every day with the same energy and drive as if it was the first day of your company.
So never getting complacent, always pushing forward.
Exactly. It's about constant innovation, experimenting, never assuming you've made it.
Which is kind of interesting, right? Because he's already seeing all this success, but he's still pushing himself and his team to stay on their toes. Makes you wonder what he was so worried about.
Well, he actually addresses that directly in the letter. He says he's terrified, not of the competition, but of his customers.
Of his customers. That's kind of surprising. Why would he want people to be afraid of their own customers?
It's about understanding that customer loyalty is something you earn, not something you're entitled to, especially in the fast-paced world of e-commerce.
Things change so quickly online.
Exactly. If you don't keep innovating and exceeding expectations, someone else will come along and steal your customers.
So it's not about being paralyzed by fear, but about using it as a motivator to stay ahead of the game.
Right. And it's not just talk. He backs it up with concrete actions. He's constantly talking about improving the shopping experience, expanding what they offer, doing whatever it takes to make customers happy.
Okay, so we've got this picture of this customer-centric company growing at warp speed, led by a guy who's both super ambitious and surprisingly paranoid. But let's talk about the people building this empire. What kind of team is he putting together?
He talks about three key hiring principles: admire, raise the bar, and superstar factor.
Superstar factor. Okay, now I'm intrigued. What does that even mean in a practical sense?
It's about recognizing that everyone has something unique to offer, something that might not jump out at you on a resume.
So it's not just about ticking boxes and looking for specific skills. It's about finding people with that extra spark, that passion that can really make a difference.
That's it exactly. And then there's the admire principle, which is about surrounding yourself with people you respect, people you can learn from. They say, if you're the smartest person in the room.
You're in the wrong room.
Exactly. And then there's raise the bar, which is all about fostering a culture of continuous improvement, never settling for mediocrity.
He wanted to create an environment where people were constantly pushing themselves, learning and growing.
Yeah. And you can see how these principles, they're not just about finding talented people, they're about building a certain kind of culture at Amazon.
It sounds like he was building more than just a company. He was creating a community of driven, talented individuals, all working towards a common goal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he was willing to invest in those people too. He talks about the importance of things like stock options, giving employees a real stake in the company's success.
He wanted everyone to have skin in the game, to feel like they were all part of something bigger.
It was a bold move, but it showed his commitment to building something that would last, a team that was in it for the long haul.
And that brings us to another key theme that runs through this whole letter: his long-term vision. He talks about making decisions that prioritize market leadership over short-term profits.
He's very explicit about that. They're willing to make, and I quote, bold rather than timid investment decisions.
Even if it means taking a hit in the short term, he's playing the long game, and he's not shy about telling his shareholders that.
And it's not just about being patient. It's about having the conviction to stick to your vision even when it's tough.
It's risky, but it's also incredibly inspiring. It shows a level of belief in what he's building that's pretty rare.
Yeah, and it makes you think, are we making decisions for the now or for the future? Are we playing the short game or the long game? Reading this letter really gives you a sense of, I don't know, the sheer scale of what they were trying to build. It's easy to forget that in 1998, Amazon was still this relatively small company.
Yeah, they weren't the behemoth they are today.
Not even close.
Mm.
But they were juggling so much, expanding internationally, building these massive distribution centers, launching new product categories, all at the same time.
It sounds kind of chaotic, like they were just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what stuck.
It was definitely a time of experimentation. Bezos even acknowledges in the letter that not every experiment will be successful.
But he was okay with that.
He saw it as a necessary part of the process. The learnings from those failures would ultimately be invaluable.
He even says something like they're going to make bold investments, even if they don't know for sure if those investments are going to pay off.
Right. He's talking about taking calculated risks. And that's a pretty different approach from a lot of companies that are so focused on hitting those quarterly numbers.
Yeah, it's about playing the long game, like we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And it requires a certain level of, I don't know, maybe courage or conviction to stick to that vision, even when there's pressure to deliver immediate results.
It's easier said than done, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. But it makes you think, in our own lives, are we making decisions for the short term or the long term? Are we building something that will last?
That's a good question. So they were making bold moves, taking risks, but they were also being smart about it. Bezos mentions this idea that their business model is cash favored and capital efficient. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. Think about it this way. Traditional retailers, they have to invest tons of money in physical stores, inventory, all that stuff.
Huge overhead costs.
Exactly. Amazon being primarily online, they could operate with a much leaner structure.
So they didn't need all that brick and mortar, which freed up resources to invest in other areas.
That's the idea. That efficiency, it became this huge advantage for them. It allowed them to reinvest that cash flow right back into growth and innovation.
It's like a snowball effect, fueling their expansion.
And it's fascinating to see how Bezos was able to really leverage the unique advantages of e-commerce from the very beginning.
He was ahead of the curve for sure, so they're growing rapidly, but he's not just sitting back and counting the money. What was he focusing on back then?
Well, he lays out a few key areas in the letter: expanding their distribution infrastructure, beefing up their systems capacity, strengthening their brand promise, and of course, always exploring new product and service offerings.
And he talks a lot about the importance of building a strong team.
Absolutely.
Mm.
He understood that people are the heart of any successful company.
And he wasn't just looking for warm bodies to fill seats. He was very deliberate about the kind of people he wanted at Amazon.
Right. He wanted people who not only had the skills, but also, shared his values and his vision for the company. Remember those hiring principles?
Admire, raise the bar, superstar factor. It's about more than just a job. It's about building a culture.
And it's about rewarding those people, too. He talks about the importance of things like stock options, giving employees a real ownership stake in the company.
So everyone wins if the company does well.
Exactly. It creates that sense of alignment and shared purpose.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing, was it? They must have faced some challenges along the way. What does Bezos say about that?
He's actually pretty candid about the challenges. Intense competition, the need for constant innovation, the risk of making big bets that don't always pan out.
So they were in uncharted territory, constantly having to adapt.
Right. He talks about the need to constantly evaluate what's working and what's not, and not being afraid to make adjustments along the way. To jettison what's not working and step up investment in what is.
It's a very data-driven approach, but also one that embraces experimentation and learning from those experiments.
And that's something we can all apply to our own lives. It's not about avoiding failure. It's about having the resilience to learn from it and keep going.
So we've got this incredibly ambitious company, a visionary leader. They're focused on the customer. They're willing to take risks, and they're constantly learning and adapting. It's a pretty remarkable story. All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Bezos's 1998 letter to shareholders. It's amazing how much ground we've covered. We've talked about his big vision for Amazon, his strategies, the challenges they were facing, but One thing that keeps sticking with me is how much he seemed to just nail the future of e-commerce, like he was peering into a crystal ball or something.
It is kind of spooky how many things he talks about in this letter that are, like, totally normal today.
Give me an example. What did he see coming that most folks didn't?
Well, for one, he was super big on this whole personalization thing. Amazon isn't just a place to buy stuff. It's like a tool to help you discover things you might be interested in.
So it's like, instead of me just going to a website and searching for a specific book, Amazon is using what they know about me to recommend things I might not even know I wanted yet.
Exactly. And that's such a huge part of their strategy today. I mean, think about how powerful their recommendation engine is.
I feel like half my purchases come from those recommendations.
Mine too. And then there's this whole thing about building a global brand. Remember, this is 1998. Most companies aren't even thinking globally yet.
Yeah, the internet was still kind of a new thing.
Right. But Bezos was already thinking about Amazon as a global force. He understood that the internet was going to break down all these geographical barriers and create this massive global marketplace.
So he was laying the groundwork for all that international expansion we see today.
Oh, yeah. He talks about the need to invest in the infrastructure and systems that could handle a global customer base, billions in revenue, all of that. He also knew that technology was going to be a key driver of that growth, investing heavily in systems capacity.
So not just anticipating the future, but actively building for it.
Exactly. But here's the one that really blew my mind. He actually talks about Amazon potentially offering these recurring services, like memberships, going beyond just one-time purchases.
Wait, is he talking about like the whole subscription economy thing?
Yeah, like what we see today with Prime, Kindle Unlimited, all those subscription services they offer.
Did people even use that term subscription economy back then?
I don't think so, but it's clear that Bezos saw the potential for that model.
And now it's everywhere.
It is. And I think it shows, not just his business savvy, but also this deeper understanding of how consumer behavior was shifting.
People are becoming more and more comfortable buying things online.
Yeah, they wanted convenience, selection, a personalized experience, all of that.
And Amazon was there to give it to them.
They were in the right place at the right time, but they also had this really clear vision of where things were headed.
But it wasn't all roses, right? I mean, there had to be some bumps along the way.
Oh, yeah. He's very honest about the challenges they were facing. Intense competition, the need to constantly innovate, and, not every bet they made was going to pay off.
It's a reminder that even for someone like Bezos, success wasn't guaranteed.
Right. But you also get this sense of, I don't know, optimism. Like, even though they knew it was going to be tough, they were still excited about the possibilities. He really believed in this idea of e-commerce, and he was determined to make Amazon the leader in this space.
So what's the big takeaway for us, for folks who aren't running these massive companies? What can we learn from all this?
Well, one thing that stands out to me is this idea of adaptability. The world is constantly changing, especially now, and I think those who are willing to adapt, to embrace new technologies, new ways of doing things, those are the folks who are going to thrive.
It's about having a growth mindset, always being willing to learn and evolve, not being afraid to step outside your comfort zone.
And it's about, like, having a vision for the future. Even if that vision seems kind of crazy or impossible, Bezos never let the doubters get to him. He stayed focused on that big vision and created something that has, truly changed the world.
It's a pretty inspiring story. He's proof that, even the most ambitious goals are achievable if you've got the passion, the perseverance, and the willingness to think big.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into Jeff Bezos' 1998 letter to shareholders.
It's been quite a journey going back in time to those early days of Amazon.
And I hope it's given you some food for thought, some inspiration, and maybe even some ideas to apply to your own life and work.
As always, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time.